this is actually the one that I think concerns me the most, because this could be, and maybe this is movie based, but this could be somebody sitting in their basement in a completely different country who has nothing but time on their hand and hatred for fill in the blank for whatever reason, having the ability to metaphorically throw the switch on a massive amount of the US population.
Yeah, so candidly, this is not a subject that I've done a ton of reporting on, but there's no question that this is like there's massive cybersecurity risk. I mean, it only grows with time, like as our technological capacity increases, right?
Yeah.
It's just like it could be it, it could be anyone. I mean, not anyone, but it could be. It's becoming easier for someone without a great deal of um, knowledge about like specific aspects of the grid or whatever to inflict real harm. I mean, there's no question, and I can't really do much to like quantify how that's changed over time. But I do have a colleague who I worked really closely with on some of the PG&E stuff, and it's really unfortunate that she retired fairly recently and then passed away. But she was doing a ton of work on some cybersecurity grid related stuff, and she didn't quite finish the project that she wanted to work on. But kind of the parting thoughts were like, this is a very big deal.
Do you have any understanding that it's not your direct purview, but do you have any understanding of how linked the power grids are, not only in California, but let's just say in the US? How intrinsically tied are they to technology? I mean, is there a human? I'm assuming it requires something other than a human being watching a meter, like a vacuum meter going back and forth for supply and demand. But is it hard stopped by a human, or do you think we're accelerating towards a place where it is completely technologically managed?
Oh, well, I mean, certainly, I mean, the systems used to track all different aspects of the power grid are tied into like computers,
Yeah.
right? So, I mean, there's when you go into like a control room, whether it be at a utility company or at the grid operator level, I mean, there's all kinds of programs and software used to track a lot of things and control output on power plants. And, I mean, even just that in and of itself, if you're controlling the output of a power plant, like this plays into the sort of supply and demand issue that we were talking about earlier. I mean, to either like to have it just, go totally offline unexpectedly or like multiple all at once, then all of a sudden, again, you're creating that like cascading failure issue that we were talking about. So, I mean, there's lots of ways in which this could be disrupted. Like how easy that is based on like the way that the computers are used, I don't quite know, but it's not that hard to imagine.
That is it's terrifying to me. I feel like we live with a thinner veneer of stability and security than most people would want to wrap their heads around. And I don't remember exactly where the quote comes from, but I do like the quote and I believe it to be true, but it essentially says that we're 9 meals away from anarchy at any given time, meaning 3 days of what if the power goes out. And the first day you're going to be all right. Second day things are coming off the edges a little bit, and then the third day, not that it would happen this fast, neighbors are eating each other. I think that would probably take a little bit longer, but I don't know how much longer. And that's probably the biggest concern that I have, especially in areas. I love California, born and raised in California, but the subdivision that I lived in, quite frankly, has more people in it than the city that I live in now in northwestern Montana. They're spread out more. They're a little bit more self-reliant. I don't know what it would look like if the power went off legitimately for beyond that 3 day time period, or pushed it into 9, or pushed it into a month. I worry as to whether or not our society would hold up very well.
If it was across I mean, there's been instances in which the power's been out for 3 or 4 days for large numbers of people, and where it's like it's been disastrous in many ways. We didn't like end up resorting to cannibalism, right? But it's like,
That's on the fourth day, maybe the fifth day. It's hard to say.
well, let me put it this way. I mean, so there's been a number of instances for different reasons that we've seen in recent years when there's been several days without power. One of the most acute issues happened in 2021. Yeah, in Texas. And so we were talking about rolling blackouts earlier, supply demand issues. It was across the board failure for a number of different types of power plants, talking everything: coal, gas, nuclear plant froze, wind and solar went up and down, sometimes overperforming, sometimes underperforming. And the grid operator had to call for rolling blackouts, but because like there was so little supply relative to demand, the blackouts couldn't roll, right? So like a utility company is not going to shut off a critical circuit serving a hospital. So they
Mhm.
have the choices of sort of the discretionary circuits. They had to like choose all of them all at once. And so the power was out in Texas in sub-freezing temperatures for as long as 4 days in some places. And like we didn't see like full scale collapse of society, but you did see people burning furniture in their homes, right? And like just doing other rash, radical things to try to survive. And more than 200 people died, whether just because they froze or because there was some sort of issue with like running the car in the garage or whatever it might have been, you know, and
Yeah.
like, um, and it was terrifying, right? It's just like it just underscores the fact that like how reliant we are on this infrastructure and the fact that it needs to function in order for us to live.